Hello, and welcome back to the ministry. This is Todd Cameron. I got three short, I wouldn't really want to call them a word. It's kind of like a flow because I was sitting in the presence of the Lord, and in the midst of our time, there were some things that were really just bugging me. And I just sat before Him and just expressed my feelings, and in it these topics kind of came up, and I decided that this was something He wanted me to share. Why? Because He gave me the scriptures for it. So um we're gonna go into that, and yeah, that's what we're talking about today. So I'm going to do the first one. This is being filmed during the time of the Passover week in April 2020. What is it? It's April 22nd, 2024. Okay. And between April 20, well, actually April 30th, 2024. That's the Passover week. So the Lord kind of gave me this after I did the words on the Shunammite man. And He gave me this wisdom. I'm going to need for y'all to go back to last year around summertime. I did a word which was called something about the experiences of the plagues. Your spouse is experiencing the plagues or something like that in relation to where they were. Okay? He gave it to me, and it's actually an image on that one. It looks like a cloud storm over Egypt in that video. But the Lord kind of gave this to me about this week, that God is not playing with His people, and He's not playing about people that have toyed with His people. Now, with that being said, in that word, I talked about the fact that there were 10 plagues in Egypt. Now, I can only remember like 8 of them: the frogs, the gnats, the flies, the locusts, the boils, the welts. Well, the boils and welts are the same thing. The blood, and I believe the death, when the death angel came through. I can't remember anything else. And I literally looked through, and those were the only ones that I could remember seeing when I looked through the scripture on the plagues. Now, when it comes down to this, your spouse had to go through a series of plagues on their own. Meaning, these were certain things that when your spouse was walking through certain experiences in the latter year, I'll say, that God was already starting to pull on them that they needed to come in the direction of you. They weren't ready yet. They didn't have any understanding, and maybe some of them didn't know of you, but they weren't ready to make those moves and movements. So God made it uncomfortable for them to remain in the same type of misbehavior that they were in. How did He do so? He brought the equivalent of the series of the 10 plagues in that individual's life. Okay? So anything that was used as a god or an exaltment above Him, he turned them into a slave to it. He turned them into understanding that this was an idol that they had in their life. He showed them that by keeping that thing in their life, they were going to be way more miserable than by continuing to walk with him. So what he had to do was he had to show them every idol that stood before them in their life, whether it was a person, whether it was a place, whether it was a thing, whether it was their money, whether it was whatever it was. He had to show them by causing that plague to attack that thing. Because remember, all of the plagues were against the very idols that they used. That literally a storm blew up around each one of those things. Their vanity, locusts. Their vanity, flies and gnats eating boils, all this kind of stuff. Things that they had managed to make into a god to them were used against them. God turned their idols against them. So it's the very thing that he did to your spouses. But with that being said, that he did those things to your spouses came into realization. If you saw my video on a slow speed chase, he was chasing them slowly through these things happening. It's like, oh, I know that you're going to come because of the fact that these things are going to fall apart. The things that you have made gods in your life are going to fall apart. Their money, their career, their this, their that, whatever it is going to fall apart, because he has to take them through rotations of, just like the plagues, he had to take them through understanding that this ain't going to sustain you without me. But what ended up happening is they needed to be released from the idolization of those things. Some of them, their hands were bound. Some of them, their minds were bound. Some of them, their spirits were bound. God had to set them free. And thank God for the children of God like us that was standing in the gap for our spouses, that some of it probably wasn't as bad as it could have been because of the fact that we stood in the gap, and our mercy in prayer made for their deliverance not to be as bad as it would have been had we not been praying. Because they may or may not have been able to make it through that had we not been praying for them. But what the Lord was showing me is the fact that at the same time that they were going through their individual plagues, there were enemies coming up against them that caused storms to occur within their life, which refers back to my word where I did the 10-part series on the movie Deja Vu, that there were storms that spun up around them and it affected the individuals around them. But these things were used in order to show and prove to them that the people around them were untrustworthy. Because the second they started going through, remember the word that I did, that God made your spouse's life look ugly in order to get rid of the people around them that was problem. Because they weren't going to stick around if there wasn't. It showed them who these individuals were, even if they thought that these people had been around forever and that they weren't going nowhere. We as people have this tendency that we get used to people and we assume they're going to be around forever. And God be like, there's one reason why a lot of people don't like walking with God in the first place is because God will do several rotations where he will move people in and out of your life. And that means if it has to be once a month, he going to remove them once a month. If it means they're going to be removed once every 6 months, they're going to be removed once every 6 months. If they got to be removed once a year, then I guess you got to change out people once a year, because you keep making the same mistakes of bringing in wrong people. You need to identify in you. This is what processing does, that allows you the ability to gain wisdom. That's why I will always go forth before God. Who's this person? Why this person here? Is this person supposed to be here? I got another word coming up where I'm going to talk about that a little bit deeper. Because they had to come into those realizations, but they had to go through a rotation of certain things happening in their lives, falling apart in their lives for them to gain the wisdom and understanding. But here's the key kicker to that. Some of your spouses was avoiding certain things dying off in their life. They held on to it for dear life. But just like when the last plague came, which was death, some things had to die off, whether it be relationships needed to die off, whether it was circumstances needed to die off, and in some cases, hate to say it, some people had to die off in order for them to move to where they needed to be. But what happened when the plague of death came? There were certain things that, due to the fact that these individuals were associated with certain people, things were brought to death in other people's lives surrounding your spouse. You understand what I'm saying? And because of that, that then therefore brought them to a phase that where these people may have wanted to continue to hold on to your spouse or keep your spouse within their alignment with them, they're going to let them go irregardless, because Pharaoh had to let go of the Israelites because he couldn't handle that last plague. There are people that God's bringing a plague into their life that have tried to hold your spouse in place for as long as they tried to hold your spouse in place. And God said, I got one for you. And he did what he needed to do. And what happened, and in this process of that, anything that was associated, and I'm being reminded of the word that I told you guys about, that it was a forced release, that even but for a moment, they forcibly released your spouse, meaning either they pushed them out with a level of force, or the force of whatever happened to the individual that was holding on to your spouse caused that person to kick them to the curb. Because God said, you're not going to hold on to them any longer. This could be a counterfeit. This could be an opportunity. This could be a job. This could be whatever it is. Remember, the children of Israel had to sleep with all of their clothes on because God was preparing. When Pharaoh said, get out, he said, get out. They had to grab whatever they could. The bread wasn't even fully leavened yet. And they had to grab it and go. Some of your spouses, and the Lord brought me to this revelation, and I had been praying about some things, and I kept trying to figure out, God, why you keep showing me this? And I got full confirmations that what is going to end up having to happen is it's going to be an Exodus moment. It's going to be a get the hell out in the element where your spouse may have wanted to stay comfortable in it, and he knew it was getting uncomfortable, and he literally sat there and waited until it got to a point, and God made it, if you was looking for a sign to know that now was the time to leave, now's the time to leave, because now I'm going to tell them to tell you to get out. And it's going to be a scenario of, you're going to have to go now. Exodus. And I got confirmation from 2-3 different spaces. And I'm like, Jesus. He even brought one of my leaders a video I had missed the same day I was getting confirmation of this, of her literally saying it was going to be Abraham leaving to go where God showed them situation. And I was like, whoa. Only to further be confirmed by the Passover, that in Passover, what happened? Children of Israel were forced out of Egypt and they had to leave. Get out. Your spouse is going to be forcibly forced out of what they wanted to remain comfortable in. They knew it was time to go, but if they weren't quite understanding, and when that force out happens, ooh. But this means on your end, you're going to have to be ready and prepared, because when they get forced out, guess where they coming? I got confirmation after confirmation after confirmation after confirmation after confirmation. You've been getting the words. They're en route to you. They en route to you. When this happens, they going to be en route to you. No wind, no rain is going to keep them from getting to you. Yes, I just quoted a Supremes song. With Supremes, I think it was the Supremes. They're coming straight for you. I've been seeing the song keep popping up on my playlist on YouTube from Dwale called Find a Way. They gonna find a way. And then it's another one by Lecrae, something similar to that, talking about trying to find a way to you. Oh, they coming. Be ready so you don't have to get ready. So yeah, be prepared. They about to have an Exodus moment that they saw the plagues, they saw the wind, they saw the rain, but now they about to, that death angel coming through is about to cut off everything. And they ain't gonna have but no choice. And just the last part. Red Sea. That I saw this when I was listening to a recountance of the Red Sea moment. God is literally separating the pathway of the Red Sea, that whatever it is that they've been dealing with, tied up to, bound to, shut up with, all this kind of stuff, that stuff is going to be separated, just like the Red Sea was, and they're going to have a full clear path to come out of that thing. And they're going to have to run right through it, because the enemies, going to be on their tail. Just like when David, Saul was looking for him and his wife told him that he had to leave and he took off running that night. Yeah, they gonna come on the run. And it's funny, I keep hearing that. Now I'm hearing a damn song. Pardon my French. On the run. That they gonna come that fast. Literally are watching as the walls of the Red Sea are parting before them, and they have to run through it, but the enemy's on their tail on the run, because they don't want them to get to you. They've been on your spouse's tail for a minute now. But what's going to happen is God's about to drown them, just like in the Passover. That the attempt to chase behind them, that's why I've probably been consistently keep telling y'all, blackmail, extortion, accusation, insinuation, intimidation, incarceration, and assassination. These are all of the things that have been chasing them, but God's about to wash it out. I'm reminded of the scripture in Revelations 12 that when the woman came out the last time from her hiding place, that the what do they call that snake? The that marine kingdom snake spirit that came up, it had tried to drown her. These individuals have tried to drown them with all of these kinds of things, but what's going to end up happening is they're about to be drowned. God's going to close the waters off, that they literally are going to get to the other side. But this also means, go back and look at Diani Nev's word. She did a word talking about keep the porch light on, because they coming to you because they just got out of it. I've been seeing 909 like crazy, that literally when they come, it will be as if, like, literally, they just got out of the fight. Coming to you lowly riding on a donkey. They are coming to you in humility and humbleness. that it's over. But that means that y'all got work to do, because you're going to have to help them through the processing of what just happened. So it's passing over, but there's something that comes with that. So that was the end of this word. So get ready. The shift is happening. And when they come to you, know that you're going to have to go. So I hope this blesses you. Until next time. Bye-bye.